April 6, 1917. President Woodrow Wilson never asks Congress for a declaration of war against Germany. In our timeline, over 4 million American soldiers would cross the Atlantic. They would tip the balance of the bloodiest war humanity had ever seen. But what if they hadn't? What if America had remained neutral, and the Allies had faced the Central Powers alone? You're about to witness a world where the 20th century took a dramatically different path, where empires rose and fell in unexpected ways, where the borders, simply don't exist. This isn't just an alternative history exercise. Every decision made in that critical year of 1917 sent shockwaves across decades. The world you live in today was shaped by America's entry into World War I, but in this nightmare timeline, nothing is certain. The question isn't just what would have happened, it's whether Western democracy itself could have survived. Let's step into that darker world. By spring 1917, the Allies were bleeding out. France had lost over 3 million casualties. The French army mutinies had spread to 54 divisions. Britain's forces were exhausted after the Somme. Russia was weeks away from revolution. Germany saw its opportunity. Without American intervention, the German High Command executes its final gamble, Operation Michael. Imagine the spring of 1918 without American divisions arriving to plug the gaps. German stormtroopers, using their new infiltration tactics, smash through British lines near Amiens. There are no fresh American troops to stop them. Paris is now within artillery range. The French government prepares evacuation plans. In our timeline, American soldiers fought desperately at Belleau Wood and Châteauthierry. They stopped the German advance cold. But in this timeline, the Germans don't stop. By July 1918, the tricolor is lowered from the Eiffel Tower. German troops march down the Champs-Élysées. France, the great republic that had stood for over a century, surrenders. The Treaty of Compiègne is signed. But this time, France is the defeated party. With France fallen, Britain faces an impossible choice: continue fighting alone or negotiate terms. The Royal Navy still controls the seas, but the German army now occupies Europe from Belgium to the Black Sea. Prime Minister David Lloyd George stands before Parliament. The chamber is silent as he speaks words that would have been unthinkable months before. Terms must be discussed. The Treaty of London is signed in December 1918. Britain retains its empire and naval supremacy. But Belgium becomes a German protectorate. France is carved into occupation zones. Germany annexes the mineral-rich regions of Lorraine. A puppet French government operates from Vichy. Sound familiar? This wasn't 1940. This was 1918. The British public is devastated. Millions died in the trenches for nothing. The war poets had written of sacrifice and glory. Now they write only of betrayal. America, watching from across the Atlantic, feels vindicated in its isolation. President Wilson declares that European conflicts are not America's concern. The Monroe Doctrine is reaffirmed with newfound conviction, but the world has changed forever. Victory transforms Germany overnight. The Second Reich becomes the dominant European superpower. Kaiser Wilhelm II, who in our timeline abdicated in disgrace, now presides over the most powerful empire since Napoleon. The German zone of influence stretches from the Atlantic to Poland. Middle Europa, the German dream of a unified Central European economic bloc, becomes reality. German becomes the language of commerce across the continent. But here's where it gets interesting. Germany's military leadership, flush with victory, doesn't dissolve into the chaos that spawned Hitler. There is no Weimar Republic, no hyperinflation, no Treaty of Versailles with its crushing reparations and war guilt clause. Think about that for a moment. Without the humiliation of Versailles, without the economic devastation, without the political chaos, would the Nazi Party have ever risen to power? In this timeline, Germany is strong, confident, and victorious. Adolf Hitler remains an obscure failed artist. The beer hall putsch never happens. The Holocaust never occurs. But don't mistake this for a better world. The German Empire is still autocratic, militaristic, and expansionist, just in different ways. Meanwhile, in the East, Russia's nightmare deepens. In our timeline, Allied pressure and hope of American resources kept Russia in the war just long enough. But without American entry, the Bolshevik Revolution succeeds earlier and more completely. By late 1917, Lenin signs an even harsher treaty with Germany. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk strips away Ukraine, Poland, the Baltic states, and Finland. Russia loses a third of its population and half its industrial capacity. But here's the twist. Germany's victory in the West means they never have to retreat from these territories. Ukraine remains a German breadbasket. The Baltic states become German vassals. Poland is reborn as a German satellite. Russia, meanwhile, descends into an even bloodier civil war. Without Allied intervention, without foreign pressure to moderate, the Bolsheviks become more radical, more paranoid. Stalin rises to power earlier. The purges begin in the 1920s instead of the 1930s. Millions die in famines as Soviet agriculture collapses. The USSR becomes a hermit kingdom, isolated and desperate. The Cold War, as you know it, it doesn't exist, because the Soviet Union never becomes a superpower. Across the Atlantic, America watches Europe's transformation with grim satisfaction and growing unease. The isolationists seem vindicated. See, they say, European wars are not our concern. But isolation comes at a cost. America's economy, which boomed with wartime production in our timeline, develops differently. Without the urgent industrial mobilization, without the massive bond drives, without the transformation into the arsenal of democracy, America remains rich but insular. The Roaring Twenties? They're quieter in this timeline. Jazz still emerges, but American culture doesn't explode onto the world stage the same way. Why? Because America isn't seen as the savior of democracy. It's seen as the nation that stood aside. Immigration from Europe slows to a trickle. The brilliant minds fleeing fascism in our timeline. Many never leave because their particular version of fascism never develops. Albert Einstein might remain in Berlin. Enrico Fermi stays in Italy. The Manhattan Project? It happens in Germany, not New Mexico. Think about that while you try to sleep tonight. America's military remains small, coastal-focused. The army shrinks. The idea of a massive standing military force seems absurd. Why would America need one? By 1925, Europe has settled into an uneasy new order. The German Empire dominates the continent economically and militarily. But it's not the genocidal regime of our timeline's Third Reich. It's more like Imperial Germany on steroids. Autocratic, militaristic, but rational. German corporations control the resources of half a continent. Krupp, Siemens, and IG Farben become more powerful than many nations. The German mark becomes the dominant European currency. Paris, occupied but not destroyed, becomes a center of collaboration and resentment. A resistance movement simmers in the shadows. French intellectuals debate whether armed resistance or cultural preservation is the path forward. In Britain, the loss of prestige leads to political turmoil. The Labour Party gains strength, demanding answers for why millions died for nothing. The British Empire begins to fracture earlier. India's independence movement, emboldened by Britain's weakness, gains momentum. Without American idealism to appeal to, they appeal to German pragmatism instead. Eastern Europe becomes a patchwork of German client states. The Habsburg Empire, saved by German victory, maintains a zombie-like existence. Austria-Hungary limps forward under German protection. But here's the terrifying truth about this timeline. The Second World War still happens, just differently. By the mid-1930s, tensions are rising again. Germany's empire has grown too large, too aggressive. The Kaiser's successors push further into Eastern Europe, eyeing the resources of a weakened Soviet Union. Britain, having rebuilt its forces over 2 decades, decides it cannot tolerate further German expansion. The Second Great War begins not as a fight against fascist genocide, but as a traditional great power conflict. France, still occupied, rises in rebellion to support Britain. The French resistance, which had been building for years, finally strikes. America, in this timeline, debates intervention again, but the landscape is different. This isn't a war against obvious evil. It's a war between empires. Many Americans ask, why should we care which European empire dominates the continent? The interventionists make a desperate case. If Germany controls all of Europe's resources and industry, eventually they'll come for the Americas. But without Pearl Harbor, without a direct attack, America remains divided. The debate rages as Europe burns for a second time. Let's step back and analyze what this alternative timeline reveals about our own history. In our world, America's entry into WWI did more than just tip the military balance. It established the United States as the guarantor of international order. The League of Nations failed, yes, but it laid groundwork for the United Nations. The Marshall Plan rebuilt Europe. NATO contained Soviet expansion. American power, for all its flaws, created a framework for unprecedented global prosperity and the longest period of great power peace in European history. Without American intervention in 1917, none of that happens. Europe remains locked in cycles of imperial rivalry. Democracy, rather than spreading, contracts. The ideals of self-determination and international cooperation. They wither without American championing. But here's what keeps historians up at night. This alternate path wasn't impossible. It was actually probable. America very nearly stayed out. The vote for war passed Congress, but not overwhelmingly. A few changed votes, a different president, a slightly different submarine warfare campaign, and this nightmare timeline becomes reality. The world you know hung by a thread in 1917. So what does this thought experiment teach us? That history isn't inevitable. The world we inherited wasn't foreordained. It resulted from specific decisions made by specific people at critical moments. Woodrow Wilson's decision to ask for a declaration of war changed everything. The congressmen who voted yes altered the course of human civilization. Think about that the next time you vote, or protest, or speak up on an issue. History turns on such moments. In our timeline, American soldiers died by the hundreds of thousands in 2 world wars. Their sacrifice seems almost unbearable when you consider it. But in this alternate timeline, we see what might have been lost had they not. A German-dominated Europe without American intervention might have avoided the specific horrors of Nazism, yes, but it would have created different horrors, different oppressions, different victims. The 20th century was going to be violent regardless. The question was, what principles would emerge victorious? What world would your grandparents inherit? As you sit here today, in a world of international institutions, global trade, and relative great power peace, remember it almost didn't happen. What if America never entered World War I? We'd be living in a fundamentally different world. And there's no guarantee it would be better.